Hi everyone. Today we are going to learn how to do this effect in TOUCHDESIGNER. It's the same effect I used in this video that I posted online a couple of months ago. It's inspired a lot by risograph art. So what's really nice is that we can use photos and pre-recorded videos as well, and it will adjust the resolution automatically. So for a little project tour, we are going to take our base images or videos, apply texture to them, play around with the levels so we get these really nice monochrome base layers. We then apply color onto those layers and overlap them, and then more texture, and then that's it. So it's a really simple project, but I think there is a lot of beauty and power within its simplicity. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is figure out what our input will be. So is it a photo? Is it a video? Is it your live webcam feed? It can be anything. But if you want to do photo or video, hit tab, go to movie file in under top, and then hit P. And then once you hit P, you will have the menu on the top right. Over at file, hit the plus, and then navigate to wherever your source file is. Alternatively, you can also just drag your image or video directly into the project itself, and it will load the same. So if you wanted to do webcam, hit tab, and then you just select video device in, and then you will be good to go. But for this project, I have my photo here. So now that we have our input, click on the end of the node and drag, hit tab, and then go to null. And let's name this something like input. So you just double click the name and type. So if we see what we have done, you hit this blue button, we have done nothing, or so it seems. Why this is important is because let's say later on, you're halfway through this tutorial and you realize, okay, I actually want this photo to be more zoomed in. So just so we can see. So now it's more zoomed in. Well, if you didn't have this node, you would have to, drag this ending to everywhere that needs to be modified and changed. But because we added this null, we can always edit the source file as long as it happens before this null, and the rest of the project will adapt accordingly. So it's a really small and seemingly trivial thing to do, but it's very good practice to just add nulls whenever you sort of finish one part of a project. So from here, we want to drag from the null, hit tab, and let's go to chop and then info. So one of the main problems we want to solve is that when we have things like texture and the file sizes are all different, we want to have a dynamic way of scaling them all to match this source file's resolution. So 1080 by 720 for this one. So one way we can do that is with this info chop. If we, go into it a bit more, we can see it has a lot of data like res X, res Y, and all these other pieces of information. We care about the X resolution and the Y resolution. So from info 1, drag from the end, hit tab, and then let's choose select, hit P, and then if we go to channel names and then hit this sort of like arrow, click on res X, do it again, click on res Y. Now we have just our resolution information. And once again, we just add a null for good practice. And then we can name it once again anything, but we can name it something like resolution, like res for resolution. So to demonstrate this, after our input, we can drag, hit tab, go to fit, and then, for example, you go to common and we have our sort of resolution here. If we hit the star in the bottom right corner of the res chop, we can drag, because now it's active, we can drag res X to the X space and then res Y to the Y space. And then everything we put will now be scaled accordingly. And it doesn't really do anything because we did it to our source file, but we can now do this for anything we put into the project that needs to be rescaled. So now that we have done that, we want to apply texture. But before we do that, I think it's important to understand how risograph art works. So I am no expert, but here is an image or a graph. TLDR, you take different layers from a base image and you apply one single color to them. And when we overlap these layers, we get these very vibrant colors because we only use anywhere between 2 to 4 colors. And that's what gives risograph art that very textured and bright, vibrant aesthetic. So let's add some opacity. So after the fit, drag, hit tab, go to level, and then under post, you will see opacity. Set it to some number that's not 1, so it's slightly transparent. I ended up using 0.721, but you can use any value. That's just the number I ended up with for my final product. But this can be any value, so please play around with it. After that, hit tab, go to comp, and then we will get back to this in a second. So now we want to import our texture. So hit tab, and then once again, we use movie file in, but I'm just gonna paste it from my other project. So it can just be any really high resolution paper texture. This one is on Texture Labs, and the link for this specific one will be on my Patreon, but any high resolution paper texture will do. So if we right click our fit, the resolution is 1080 by 720. But if we right click the Texture Labs one, it's 1280 by 860, so they don't match. So now we need to rescale this texture so it's the exact same resolution as our input. So you might be able to see where this is going, but after the texture, hit tab, then go to fit, hit P so we can see the menu, then go to common, and then now we hit the bottom right corner of our res chop so it's active, and now let's drag the X resolution to the X space and the Y resolution to the Y space. So now if we right click this and hit info, it's the same size as our source file, which is exactly what we wanted. So now if you crop this image, resize this image before the input, everything will scale accordingly because it happened before the null. So after this, we want to once again apply some opacity. So after the fit for the texture, hit tab, go to level, and then once again, no specific reason for why I'm doing this for opacity. I just played around with it. I got the value that I liked, but 0.349. Great. So now let's drag that to comp. So it looks like nothing meaningful has happened, but let's go to preview grid. And then if you do this, you can see all these operations and what they will look like, which is really nice. So now we sort of treat it like Photoshop, where we have different layers and we want to apply them to each other. The one we're going to end up using for this is pin light. So go to pin light, and then we have this sort of transparent, papery texture. So we're going in the right direction. So now what we want to do is make this black and white. So after comp, hit tab, monochrome, and then it will make it black and white. And maybe I will just put a null at the end so we can just see the edits being made as we go. So now that it's black and white, we want to like really bump up the contrast. So after mono, right click, insert operator, go to level, and then hit P, and then contrast, let's just make it something like 2. And then maybe we want it, I don't know, like a little lower. And then let's invert it. Great. And then after that, right click again, insert operator, hit level, and then enter these values for gamma, brightness, and contrast. And then once again, I don't really have a perfect science for it, but it just sort of worked. And make sure to invert it at the end too. So now we have this really nice black and white textured version of our source file image. So if we do this side by side, we can see now there's a slight paper texture. It's really contrasted, it's black and white, but we can also see nice lights and shadows. And I think that's more so to say that there is no right answer or right values for any of these values. These are the numbers that got me to this end result, but as long as you sort of get to this end result, it's fine. So what we want from this source image is a black and white textured version with high contrast. So for example, in level, if we bump up the brightness, it makes it brighter. If we bump up gamma, it will make highlighted areas appear more bright. And for contrast, it's how contrasted it looks. So by playing around with these values, if you get to this end result, then it's correct. And these are sort of the numbers and methods that got me from this source image to that. But I would encourage you to play around with all the nodes and all these values so you get the result that you like in the end. So now let's apply color. So hit tab, and then we can use a select, and under top, enter base. So now we have another copy of our base, and it's just a lot cleaner because instead of like having like a million lines everywhere, it's just this really nice arrow that's kind of like hard to see. So yeah, and what we do here is we want to apply color. So we can drag, hit tab, and then go to lookup. And you will see this error that says second input required. And that is expected because we are going to use a ramp. So hit tab, go to ramp, and drag it into the second input. So now what we can do is apply color. So it looks like it hasn't done anything, but how this ramp works is it's saying that dark values from this image will be whatever this color is, so black, and really light colors will be what's on this side. So if you hit P and we click on the end of it, let's say we want to make it blue. So, you know, once again, just kind of just play around with these values. But we can see now that it worked because the dark values are now blue and the light values are white. So if we were to, you know, flip it, so now dark values will be white and light values will be blue, and we connect that as the second input, we get the inverse. So that's how we apply color to our black and white layer. So what we want to do now is do this 3 times for each layer of the visual. And for this visual, we use pink, blue, and orange. So I'm going to now put the ramp in. I'm just going to do it again. And then we want to make it pink. So we can use a value like this, and then I'm just sort of eyeballing it. And then we are going to do this 2 more times. So select everything by hitting Shift, then drag. It should all be highlighted. Hit Command C to copy, Command V to paste, and do it 1 more time. Great. So now let's make the other 2 layers. So go to ramp 2, click the end, and now let's just make it blue. So something like that. And then for ramp 3, let's make it orange. And then the exact numbers I used will be in the project file on my Patreon, but as long as it's these 3 colors, it should do the trick. And then orange. Great. So we can do maybe something kind of like that. Great. So now we have a pink layer, a blue layer, and an orange layer. So if we combine them, hit tab, go to composite, and then we are going to keep it on multiply, drag each of the inputs into the comp, and then it looks really bad. And that's because we need to offset 2 of the layers. So after the first one, after the first like null, right click and then insert operator and then go to transform. And then we need to offset it just by like a really small amount. So let's do like -0.01 and then -0.01. And then for orange, we'll do the same thing, but we can just do 0.01 and 0.01 instead. So now it helps out a lot, and we can sort of see how this effect works. After that, let's make it a bit more saturated. So let's go to HSV adjust, and then from there, if we just bump up the saturation a little bit, should help. And then it's looking like this just because we're not using the right colors, but we can sort of see like from the pink, the blue, and the orange, we get sort of like that green color that we want. So I'm going to actually change the ramps real quick so we can continue working after here. Great, so now I'm just gonna paste them in, and then using these values instead, we drag them into the lookup. We see that now we have our green. So the last thing we want to do is apply one more texture, so that way we can get rid of the background and like this opacity, and it will just make everything come a lot more alive. So import another texture, and this one is from Unsplash, and then I like the sort of like cardstock texture, but once again, play around with textures, just make sure it's really high resolution. So now we want to, once again, make it the same aspect ratio and resolution as our input. So hit P, and then go to common, and then we are going to drag our resolution data from before into the resolution for this fit. And then for fit, make sure it's fit outside. So now, if we go to info, we can see, great, same resolution. So hit tab, go to comp, and then we will use freeze, and then drag the more saturated version that we just did, and our texture, and then, wow, looks really good. So if we hit the display flag, we have our risograph effect, and that's actually the entire tutorial. So the rest is just playing around with values and color. So let's say we want to go back to this level and then make it like less contrasted, right? It's a little less contrasted, so we get more of that color underneath the coat, and it's not as dense. But yeah, play around with the textures, the colors, these level values, but that's the entire effect. So I hope you enjoy this video, and with just a few nodes, we can make this really cool effect that recreates analog art styles. So yeah, I'm gonna post more this week, so stay tuned, and please consider subscribing to my Patreon. Okay, bye.